Hi, I'm Scott MacGregor. I've been a professional horse trainer for 40 years. This collection in front of me is my bits part 2, and this is the stuff that has the most extreme designs that I've ever been able to find on the used bit sales market. I guess there's a few of them that are new, but for the most part, I spent 40 years looking for them. They are all of completely unique designs. They do unusual things that we would never consider to do to a horse in today's market, but some of them are not bad. They're just normal bits. They just have a unique design to them. If you see Binky's bit in this collection, I'm not saying that every bit in this collection is bad. I'm saying that every bit in this collection has a unique design. You can decide what you think about it after I get going, and you'll probably have your own opinion built by the end of the video. So what I want to do to start with is I want to show you 4 books. People ask all the time when I'm doing bit seminars, what are the best books on the market to actually learn about bits. Now, do these bits tell you specifically how to use them? Not necessarily, but they'll give you a gist of why it was designed in most cases. So the best of the 3 books, by far, and almost every bit that I'll show you today is in this book, but this is Bits and Bridles. It's written by Malm, M-A-L-M. It's a relatively expensive book, but as you can see, it's also really thick. Inside the book are pictures and pictures and pictures of bits, either illustrated or photographed, and it gives a small overview of every single one. So it doesn't exactly tell you how to use them, but it gives you the gist of it. I think it's an amazing book. I went through it 5 times, putting all the names to these bits. It's unlikely that I'll actually use their names correctly today. It would require me to go on the phone multiple times to look them up, but they are posted on my Facebook site. The next book that I find to be amazing, when I was 22 years old, I bought that book. It's called Bit by Bit. It is by Diana Tuke, and it's all pictures. And it doesn't tell you anything really about how to use the bit, but it's solid pictures all the way through. And it shows a very good number of these bits in here. It focuses mostly on English bits. When I started collecting these bits, I kind of went about it. I wanted every bit in this book, and it didn't happen because my collection took its own direction. But that was how I started my bit collecting. I had this book, and an old friend gave me a handful of bits and said, you seem interested in bits and how they work. Here's some that are pretty old. So I started my bit collection. I had clients buy bits for me that they found in antique malls and all sorts of things. For how the bits work, that's definitely the best book. It's Horse Control in the Bit, written by Tom Roberts. It's out of print, but not terribly expensive. It's written by an Australian that started dressage in Australia. What he brought to the understanding of how bits work, he is the first person that countered the idea that the bars were 5 inches apart, and basically illustrated through skulls that the bars are about as wide as your middle 2 fingers. So very narrow. The lower jawbone of the horse comes very narrow very quickly after the first molar, and by illustrating how the jaw is designed correctly, it completely reintegrate into. It made people want to see how do the bits fit in the mouth, because we always thought that a bit was 5 inches wide, and that the bones had to be under the edges over here, because that's what the cavalry manual said. And that's why everybody thought it, because it was in the cavalry manual. And it was wrong. The last of the books is called Bits, Their History and Misuse. It's written by Lewis Taylor. It also has a lot of these bits in there. So obviously one thing you'll notice really quickly is that people that collect bits like to collect stuff that's bizarre because it's fun. Because the bits that I'm using aren't on this table. So, like I said, do all of these bits hurt horses? A lot of them do. But there's a lot of bits that don't. And they're just really cool designs. Like a windsucker snaffle. It's not going to hurt anything, but it's a little bit too wide in the mouthpiece. But it's cool. So, it's part of a very unique set of bits. So, I'd like to get started on showing these bits to you. And I want to start with a simple full cheek snaffle. Now everybody's like, why on earth would you start with a full cheek snaffle on a horror show of unusual designs? And that is because this particular one has a knife edge on the inside. So when you're riding with this, you're literally riding with a butter knife sitting on the soft tissues of the horse's mouth. I think it's actually one of the meanest bits that I've ever seen designed. So people always ask me, what's the worst bit in your entire collection? Snaffle bit. So that gives you an idea of when you really look at things and really analyze how they work, sometimes your opinion changes on what's the worst bit you've ever seen. There are bits made of twisted wire that's so thin it's like a cheese cutter. Matter of fact, they're usually called cheese cutters. We've done bad things. We do them because we're afraid. Most of these designs, as you'll notice, are driving bits. I love the 1800s driving bits. All these rusty bits basically come out of that era. They're fun because they were trying to figure out how to stop a lady's cart as her horse went charging into the town square. And so they came up with unique ideas like the JIC bit. It goes in the horse's mouth, looks like normal driving edge, half cheek, but when somebody pulled those big old heavy driving reins and said, whoa, it collapses the bit straight into the cheeks and mushes it. So that's one of the most brutal bits I've ever seen. In case you missed it. So anyway, so this idea is more common than you would think. You would think, oh my gosh, how could they make that? They still make this bit. It's still sold new. This one just happens to be really old. So this is the Imperial driving bit. It does the same thing, it just does it a different way. I'm going to tip it on its side. When you pull the reins on this, it still squeezes the cheek into the face. It just does it with the leverage of the cannon, of the mouthpiece. Same idea. Smush the horse's face. Here's another one. This one's spring-loaded though, so it's really cool because it opens itself back up. So you can play with it. Same thing, squish. So this one happens to squish the lower jaw. It's actually designed to wrap under that jaw. But you have to think about how heavy driving reins are and what would happen when that weighted rein hits leverage like that and goes into the face. Now, this is the only bit that I've ever seen of its nature. It's a metal snake bit, and it hangs from the crown rings like that, and it goes in the mouth like that. So this is under the jaw, and when you say whoa horsey, it goes squish. Pretty brutal. Might be almost as bad a bit as any of the others. So you're getting the gist of how far somebody would go to stop a driving horse that was out of control. Read Black Beauty and he's racing through the things, and I guess Black Beauty probably were one of those because the guy certainly didn't take very care of him. So that is the mouth squishers. The next set of bits are basically spur bits, thorn bits, but they basically go in the horse's mouth and they have a protrusion that works off of the lower jaw. It's mostly to stop it from pulling through. They're just an unusual design. Let's see, this is a slip out bit. It's for standardbred racing. When the horse gets pulling on a rein, it pulls out and adds leverage to that side. This, ironically, is just a lunging bit. It just goes around the lower jaw, and as you're lunging, it pulls the horse's lower jaw in that direction. To go with the same design, There's a riding bit or driving bit version of it. This is called a Dexter ring bit, but I call it a Mickey Mouse bit because it looks like Mickey Mouse. But that goes around the lower jaw, so it also controls lateral steering. Back to some really wicked stuff. So if you're racing along and your horse is leaning on the bit and you're at a standard bred racetrack and you've got to get him off the bit, if you pull on it, it's got little spurs that pop him right in the side of the mouth. He gets off the bit, I guess. Never seen one being used, but I'm sure it's exciting. Let's see where to go next. So some of these 1800 bits were designed with fairly good ideas. I don't know if they worked per se, but this bit hangs from its crown. But when you pull the rein, it basically gags through a track. So it compresses the horse's skull from the crown strap to a lifting mouthpiece. So it's really cool design, but that's the newest bit in my collection. It was really hard to find. This is a really weird bit. So this probably worked with a nose strap. As you would pull the rein across the pulleys, it would tighten the nose strap. It's a really interesting design. And this one here is just a hanging snaffle. It just happens to be an 1800s design. But a hanging snaffle supports the mouthpiece. So these really cool little tabs that they designed just prevented the mouthpiece from dropping. But I thought it was really pretty in design. It's a bumper bit. It's got two mouthpieces. It's heavy as snot. It's all copper. One went in, one went under. So it surrounds the mouth, a lot like the ring bit that we saw earlier. So it surrounds the mouth. This is a Springsteen. It's a spoon bit. It surrounds the lower jaw also. Kind of presses right on that backside. It actually, when it's under use, it has a small strap that goes between the two spoons. But it's also hangs on a third and fourth ring. Just works that lower jaw. So this bit ironically has a good thing. If a horse is terrified of a bit moving in its mouth, this bit rides off the lower jaw so it holds the mouthpiece perfectly still. I have actually seen it help a horse. So it is not all bad. Just another design that smushes. This one runs the ring into the top. So the next set of bits are really, I think, cool. So you rarely see two mouthpieces in a horse's mouth at the same time, except in driving, and it shows up a lot. So this bit here is another early model of bit that was using the top bit, overcheck bit, that slides obviously in its own track. This one here is stationary. So just pretty designs. And it's one of my friends asked me how I can talk about the bits in anything but horror. I appreciate the design. Do I agree that the bit should be used? Not particularly, but you got to appreciate the ingenuity, and that's what I see in a lot of these really bizarre designs. Is somebody spent a lot of time thinking about how to stop a problem. This is actually an overcheck bit, so it actually lifts the horse's nose for standardbred racing, but it's another example of using two mouthpieces. This is a really odd snaffle. It has offset inner rings. So it has some movement to it, but it works off of these cheeks moving again into the face. So just an unusual design. The Triumph, another driving bit, but this one used a nose strap up front, also working off of the rings. So that seemed to be a common idea, is using a nose strap to create leverage. An old Berry bit, just a colt breaking bit from 1800s. so nothing special about it, but he actually had his whole line of books that you could buy that would tell you how to take a colt from the early stages of training all the way through the advanced stages of training, and this was his bit that he put together. So we'll go into another one of the most lethal bits I've ever seen. So in my earlier video, you probably remember me saying that there's nothing that would take a snaffle mouthpiece forward when you're pulling back on the mouthpiece. Right? You've got pressure on the reins, you're drawing the mouthpiece to yourself. There's nothing that can make the mouthpiece go forward. It simply presses around the mouth tissues as you draw it back. There is one and only one exception that I've ever seen, ever. This is called an Ostermeyer, and it's a palate popper. When you pull on the reins, it goes pop. So it's actually using pieces of the mouthpiece to pop the horse's palate. Obviously it was for curling, for over tucking the mouth. It was designed by a dressage trainer. So I love it when they say there's no bad bits used in dressage. Well, not in competition, but that was designed by a dressage trainer. You've got other designs where they were trying to disperse pressure by using obviously big oval lengths. Kind of a cool idea. I put it in a horse's mouth and he was like, yeah, so it's obviously not uncomfortable, but it has a lot of parts, so I'm not sure that I really want to use it, but it's a good design-ish. And then you come to the tongue depressor bits, and I think they're really cool designs. So these bits all are named on my website, on my Facebook site, but I wanted to really focus on design. So person has a tongue flipping horse, keeps popping the tongue over the bit. This is how a person solved that problem. I made the center link a tongue depressor. And somebody came along and said, well, I don't like your design, so I'm going to make my own design. So they made their bit with a tongue depressor that works off of a hinge structure, right? And you got another person that says, well, my tongue depressor can be short or long, depending on how you put it in the mouth. So, again, three designs completely different from each other. I don't know if they worked or not because I never used them, but they're cool looking. This was called the Perfect Bit. It's kind of an interesting little bit. It works off of a ball and socket cheek. It's the only time that I've ever seen that show up. I bought the Lifesaver mouthpiece, not because I preferred it, but because I didn't have one, so I got it here. But kind of a cool design. That's what this collection was about right from the beginning. It was mostly, like I said, based on driving bits or snaffle bits, but I wanted bits that were completely unique, that most of the time were bad, but not all the time. This one's not bad. It's a crescendo bit, standard bred bit. It doesn't even look comfortable, but I bet he woed off of it. So this is just a polo bit. The reason I kept this in the collection, its mouthpiece does rotate. Ironically, it rotates it, but the shanks release forward. So the shanks they lock in when you go to collect the horse, but they release forward. And I have to assume that's from running and being, at full blast out on the polo field. But this bit's a weird one because if you put it on your hand, it's not that uncomfortable. Of course, if you were to put pressure on it, it rotates up on that almost knife-like edge. So it had to be one hell of a threat to a horse to whoa. I would say it's up there with one of the meanest cur bits because I'm sure it cut horses as much as not. The next set of bits are using ball-like links. Now, tons of people have seen this bit. It's a Waterford. Is it bad? It's not bad till you start pulling it left to right, and then it just rips the mouth to shreds. It's going to bruise the mouth terribly. Is it comfortable? Well, it's based on a chain idea, so it lays fairly comfortable. But you would have to be unusually careful not to have any side-to-side motion on this bit, which would almost instantly bruise the outside edge of the bars, the lower jawbone. And of course, somebody had to make one better. So this is a Pessoa. So same idea, but now you have huge gaps in between the rotating links. And that's got to be a heck of a saw. But it also probably pinches as it forms around the tongue a little bit. So the next set of bits, probably my favorite. There are 4 completely unique designs of Citation bit or Norton Perfection bit, which this is the actual Norton Perfection bit. It's a standard bred racing bit, so these beautiful little rings here went to the nose piece that went over the nose. It had a facial plate of straps that went to an overcheck, and then the other bit just simply went in the mouth like any snaffle. But it's actually what the horse Citation won with as a racehorse, so it was a riding bit also. So once you have an idea, it's very easy then to expand upon that idea. So this is the same exact bit, but it has a bar overcheck bit. All right, so it's same idea, just used a bar, but it's different, has a different name. And then somebody said, well, I want a fancy bar. So they made this Victory bit, and it's got a fancy bar, but it's the same bit. So here's an idea that had legs, because it probably worked really well. Obviously I've never driven a standard bred, but then this is a 6-ring standard bred racing bit. Obvious reason why it has called 6 rings, 6-ring, but so same idea. It's obviously works like the Norton Perfection bit, which is it's identical too. If you lift them up, you can see that they're identical. One just is very delicate in how it's designed. This one's beefy. So here's an idea that obviously worked. Like I said, the racehorse Citation won in it. Standard bred people use it all the time. So it obviously is a very functional design for their sport. But here's 4 different designs that are completely different than each other. And for a collector, I couldn't stand not having all 4 of them because, I think they're cool. All right, so a new idea is the swales. The swales 3-in-1 bit is suspended on crown rings, but the curb chain goes on these little curlicues. And what they found is by putting the rotating rings with an independent area for the curb chain to go, it reduced or eliminated pull pressure. I think it's a cool design, a very well thought out design. I actually bought it in Europe. And of course, when I got back to the States, some cowboys made the same thing. So here you have one that is suspended by crown rings, and the curb chain goes on these little loops. It's exactly the same bit, works exactly the same way. This just came out of the Western industry. So ideas tend to evolve, but that just they're still the same idea. And this is the coolest curb bit I've ever found. And when I say cool, I do not mean good. This bit is all rings. Now, if the bars ever got up in here, the bars would slip in between the rings and could very easily break off that top ridge of bone. It's somewhat designed like the old Greek bits called disc bits. It was designed to roll softly on the tongue and on the inner structures of the mouth, but if it was pulled enough, it could get that bar trapped, and that to me makes it a pretty lethal design. It's had fun reviews on the Facebook sites that I'm part of. This is just a butterfly driving bit. There's nothing special about it. I just thought it's pretty. Nice design. One side's smooth, one side's textured. And I have a few other driving bits. Here's a Liverpool, same idea, smooth, textured. Just another one of the standard driving bits, jointed or elbow bit. This one's smooth on both sides. But you can see that it's just a standard driving bit design. But I thought, again, they're 3 pretty designed bits, and they're outside the industry that I participate in, so I enjoy them a lot. Going on, this is a halter bit. This one's sized specifically for an Arab, so that'd be a stallion lead bit for showing Arabs and halter. This is a stallion bit for leading a horse, mostly for breeding. It gives you a place to hang it on the crown rings. Obviously goes around the lower jaw, and this is your lead shank ring. So gives you a tremendous amount of control over a stallion that was being more interested in the mares than he needed to be. And then I have a real simple little bit here. So this is another 1800s bit that I found. The reason I left it in the collection instead of putting in the good bits, if you look at it, it's about, it's a little under ½ inch thick, but when you turn it on edge, it's really thin. So very unusual design in that it probably rests pretty flat like that, but when you get to pulling on it, it probably rolls up on the edge a little bit, so it gives a little bit more harsher cue. And tell me that one. And the last bit is just a very unusual curb bit in that it runs off a flat plane. Again, it rolls up on a thinner edge, very shaped to the mouth. So that gives you an overview of what I consider my most unique designs. It's my favorite part of my collection. It's stuff obviously I don't use. I've spent 38 years attaining it, and I've never sold a bit out of it. But I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, the names are on my Facebook site under Scott MacGregor, SCOT, and then the standard spelling of MacGregor, MacGregor. There go on photos. There's a file that has all of their names listed. Their names were researched out of the books that you saw earlier, and they're all correct. They were actually reviewed by a Facebook bit site that I belong to that is really fun place to talk about bits. But hope you enjoyed it. So that's my little shop of horrors.